Isn't solidarity a good word? It just does something to my heart when you say solidarity, because being together is so strong.
We're all aiming for the same thing. We're all looking towards the same goal. We support each other, we advocate and we lobby and we push and we do it together.
In 1924, the conditions would have been extremely difficult. Nurses would have had numerous patients to look after. The wages, of course, were minimal.
Not only was it tough in terms of you not being safe in your job, you also weren't respected for it. It wasn't even recognised as a job. It was just like, well, this is what women do.
Yeah, exactly. It's your vocation. Vocations don't pay the bills.
There was quite a debate at the time about whether a union was ladylike enough, but in 1924 it was the first time that there was a meeting of the Federal Council of the then Australian Nursing Federation, and that pulled together at that time just 748 members. Today, the official count of our membership is 326,789.
The world is run by those who turn up, and it's no use just having tea room politics. Get in there and do something yourself.
Student nurses were the main workforce, and they were used a little as cannon fodder in terms of plugging holes.
You just learnt what you needed to learn to do your job, which was to be a handmaiden for the medical profession.
They knew that things had to change, and I think that was what led to the changes prior to 1986, when the no strike clause was removed in Victoria, and for the first time nurses were able to take industrial action as we know it today.
The emotion was clearly evident as Nursing Federation Secretary Irene Bolger led Victoria's first mass walkout by nurses.
When we walked out of Prince Henry's and down those steps, to see all of the other nurses and midwives cheer us on and support us was, I thought, quite extraordinary.
It was a seismic shift. It was the first time in the history of nursing that it had happened.
My mum was doing her training only a year before I started. In 1986, when there was the big walkout for 50 days, she was out on the picket lines fighting for much better pay.
It was a big thing for us to come out of the closet and say that we were union members.
They do dirty work and heavy work, carrying life and death responsibilities without being paid to do it. The Cinderellas of the hospital.
And I feel they should be adequately recompensed for this.
It's not going to be a job of milk and honey, just part and parcel of nursing and medical practice.
Nurses have become increasingly dissatisfied with the implementation of the new award.
Premier John Cain was outlining sections of the Essential Services Act which could be used to bring the nurses to heel.
One would imagine that these threats might have been made by a fringe terrorist group, and it's actually being made by the state government. Each time they come up with another threat, the nurses become more resolute in their action.
They said it was impossible for nurses to strike. When they stood some people down here over some elective banting and 170 registered nurses resigned, they said we'd never do that. And they said that we'd never strike again, and we did that. And they said that we'd never walk out, and we did that. And they said that we'd never hang in there more than a day or two, and we've been out here for 50 days.
Now it is time for nurses to give a little.
Nurses had actually been giving for decades, and in fact for well over 100 years. And the fact that that wasn't recognised by the Premier was really soul-destroying at the time. It did lay the groundwork for some really considerable gains into the future.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We're actually so often viewed as a benchmark of the things that can be achieved for the professions of nursing and midwifery by other countries around the globe.
You are part of the biggest meeting of nurses to have ever taken place in this state.
More than 24,000 nurses went on strike today, demanding better pay and conditions.
They came from Wyong, Wollongong, Westmead and hospitals in between.
Stand up if you believe in this.
We have fought for great things, all for not just the betterment of the nurses, but for the patients.
Every human has a right to access public health care, and that's why we're there advocating to make it better.
We're the guardians and we need to care for it.
Thousands of nurses have walked off the job.
Here we are on the eve of another great strike.
We have been neglected for so long.
We're not going away until we get our 15%.
Nurses and midwives accepted a revised pay deal.
Both nurses and patients deserve to have nursing recognised as a profession as such, and I think it should be referred to tertiary status.
Going to university was a good step in the right direction.
It professionalised nursing and midwifery. Nurses were now critical thinkers. They weren't just being shown how to do something and following an instruction. They were thinking for themselves. They were challenging direction. They were challenging ideas. National registration was very important to keep the universities on target for what made a good nurse, what was a minimum requirement for a nurse and a midwife.
With national registration, nurses can literally move anywhere across the country. Their experience and skills are recognised, irrespective of where they choose to work.
Nurses in Victorian hospitals revealed that too many are being injured.
We saw many nurses ending up disabled and unable to work because of the requirements to lift.
Becoming a nurse practitioner was huge. I was a trailblazer.
They can diagnose, they can treat, they can write prescriptions, they can order x-rays, they can treat women's health, for example, in its entirety. They love it. They love the nurse practitioner role.
What I love about what I do is that I am an autonomous practitioner and I get to work to my maximum full scope of practice.
Nurses in 150 hospitals across the state walked off the job to call for mandated staff-to-patient ratios.
We will come back bigger and angrier each time we are ignored.
We provide better, safer care if we have better ratios.
It's not rocket science. If you have enough nurses to look after a smaller number of patients, they will be properly cared for.
I'll stick up for older people any day of the week because that's how strongly I feel about aged care improving. When it came to the care minutes of the residents in residential aged care, that was a really big win. To show we value our older people is to have enough staff to take care of their needs properly.
The Nursing and Midwifery Health Program commenced in Victoria and now it's been taken Australia-wide, which is just a fabulous initiative.
In Adelaide, we've pushed and gotten approval from our state government to implement a 10-point safety campaign. Some of the biggest wins that we've had would be getting quite a good allowance for the nurses to further their education.
Fortunately, in the last EBA, we got the addition of domestic violence leave.
We've just recently secured the inclusion of cultural safety into the EB12, so that's a big achievement.
If nurses are working in improved conditions, they're going to improve the care that they give.
What we know about nurses is they walk towards a crisis.
COVID was one of those times when things were really difficult and the job became so hard.
Trying to care for people that we didn't have the infrastructure to respond or treat, and that's incredibly overwhelming to think about when we did that for years.
That was a wild time, and that was probably the hardest time for the patients and the hardest time for their families.
In nursing, it's a constant battle to maintain what we've fought for.
Had enough of filling the gap, of working overtime, of doing extra shifts, double shifts, and dare I say it, triple shifts.
It's not just about having support, it's about progression and moving forward and being in a great career that's got a long way to go yet, and the ANMF are going to take us there.
Being together is so strong. We can do much more together than standing alone. And we've proven that time and time again.
It's, of course, the largest union in the country.
It's an awesome organisation to be a part of.
They've amplified our voice.
They've given us this reputation of being professional, to be knowledgeable, to be in a place where we should be able to demand respect because what we provide to the society is worthy of that.
Where we are now, 100 years on, 100 years strong of incredible achievements for nursing and midwifery, I think they'd think we'd done them proud.